been playing with this metaphor of things that grow now since sometime back in the summer. Growing metaphors are used often in the Bible, and really, it works in lots of different ways. Whether God is sowing seeds in us or we are sowing seeds of righteousness, no matter which way it works, everything that gets sown has to have rich and fertile soil in order to grow. So I want us to think about that this morning. What kind of soil are we? Are we the kind of soil that will produce a righteous harvest, as the letter from 2 Corinthians says? Or are we the kind of soil which has really just become dirt, that's become compacted and dry and not fertile at all? That's what we're going to explore this morning. So as we prepare for the word preached, would you join with me your hearts and minds in prayer? Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. If you talk with farmers or people who study agriculture, they will tell you, don't call it dirt. It's not dirt. It's soil. Soil is a living thing. And it's made up of multiple things. Whenever you go out into your garden and you dig your hand down deep and you draw up this handful of rich soil, what's in that? And you can't give them all the answers, Tom Ward. Sorry. What's in that? What's soil made of? Or what might you find in soil?
Decomposed leaves.
What? Decomposed leaves. Yeah, there's lots of decomposed things that should be in good, rich soil, and they make up the humus. Did I pronounce it correctly? Right, the humus. We get to watch that life cycle happen over and over and over again. That's one thing. What else? Nematodes. Thank you, David Wilcox. Yeah, have you ever dug your hand in and you bring up that handful of soil and you go, oh, it's moving. They're living things, bugs, earthworms, living organisms, some so small we can't see them, that are part of that make up healthy soil. What else is in soil? Water, absolutely. Without water, nothing can live. What else? Little rocks, absolutely. And minerals that must be in soil in order for the plant to be fed.
Oxygen.
Thank you. It's the last thing I was thinking of. There has to be air. Oxygen must be part of soil in order for those roots to grow. So friends, imagine if you would that we are a seed bed in God's garden. I was looking at some raised beds this week. Imagine, for instance, that these four walls of our church, these are that we're a raised bed in God's garden, and that you aren't the seeds, but that you together make up the soil in which God will sow these seeds so that a righteous harvest of unconditional love and justice can grow. What are you in the soil? Are you the water? Are you the air? Are you part of the humus? Are you the nematodes? Is that the right? Yeah. What are you? We all have to be there in order for that soil to be rich and life-giving. Over the past few days, I've been in Asheville, North Carolina with Ro Jameson and Anna Barnes and Julie McClure, all three who are here this morning. Do you all want to stand for just a moment so people know who you are? Sorry, Ro. Stand up. And Ro has on her shirt from Land of the Sky, UCC. Thanks. Thanks, y'all. And we attended a 3-day-long conference called Collaborative Church. This conference focused on how churches can learn to collaborate with other organizations in their community, be those other churches or other non-for-profits, other groups in their community, in order to make God's reign of greater love and justice and mercy a reality in their communities. We went to one training that was about the 4 roles of social change. Find that handout, would you? And as I read over this handout, it reminded me of all of the different things that have to be in soil in order for soil to produce life. In order for a seed of change to be sown and sprout and grow in a community, these 4 things have to be in the very soil of that community. Otherwise, that seed that God plants will not sprout and grow. It just won't. Here are the 4 things. You have to have folks who are helpers, people who simply assist folks in ways that affirm their dignity and respect. They can share their skills, they educate, they encourage experiments in service delivery which support liberation. That last one could simply be you provide food for people while other folks are out advocating for the change, right? The helpers. We all know that we need helpers, people who are behind the scenes taking care of all of the little details, the life-giving details, in order for other folks to be out in front doing their work. It's one element of the rich, fertile soil of social change. What's another one? Advocate. How are they effective? Well, advocates, they use institutions that already exist in our world, like the courts and city hall and legislatures, to get new goals and values adopted. They advocate on behalf of people to change the system. So they also use lobbying and lawsuits, and they build coalitions. They work together with groups of people to make change on a structural level. They also monitor their successes. They figure out how they can change what they're doing to be more successful. You must have advocates in this fertile soil of social change. Otherwise, the change won't happen. You also have to have rebels as part of your soil. People who are willing to go out and say no. The folks who show up with the protest signs, the people who show up as witnesses, who sit vigil, who sit watch. People who employ nonviolent direct action and who are willing to commit acts of civil disobedience in order to make this change happen. They're people who use strategy as well as tactics. They show a lot of courage and they take risks. You have to have rebels in the fertile soil of social change in order for the seeds that God sows to sprout and grow. It's just the truth. And last but not least, you have to have organizers. How are they effective? Well, organizers believe in people power. They're able to look at the room and assess the kinds of skills and gifts and talents that people have, and then employ those folks in the cause. They nurture growth in leaders. They're able to think strategically and choose strategies for long-term change. They're able to use training to build more skills and more capacities. And they promote big paradigm shifts, right? They see a big picture, and they're able to help people pivot to think differently about that big picture. So again, if you imagine that the four walls of this church are the raised bed in God's garden, and that we are the fertile soil that's been placed there, so that God can sow seeds of justice and righteousness and mercy and love, all of the things that make for whole and healthy lives, both for individuals and communities. Who are you in the soil? What part of the soil are you? I wanted to do an experiment today, and I want to tell you that that if you would rather not participate, that is okay. If you'd rather sit and do some writing about which of these four roles you are most likely to fill, that is perfectly fine. But if you're willing to take a risk with me this morning, I want to invite you to think about which of these four things you are, and then to get up and move to go spend a little bit of time with the other people who fill that role in the soil that is our church and community. So the room is sectioned off just like your paper. And listen to all the instructions, please, before you move. I want to invite people who consider themselves helpers to come and gather over here. I want to invite people who think of themselves as advocates, or who use those skills, to come over here. I want to invite people who most comfortably feel like they are rebels to come back here. See the sign? And I want to invite folks who most readily use organizer skills to move over here. And then what we're going to do is I want to invite you to spend a few moments listening to each other, completing this sentence. I am a helper because I am able to XYZ. I'm an advocate because I'm able to XYZ. I'm a rebel because I'm able to XYZ. And I'm an organizer because I'm able to do XYZ. By the way, you don't have to have 3 reasons. But we want to go around in the circle and share with each other how you're able to do that. And you can answer that question in terms of our church or in terms of the community in which we live. This is a sermon that we all get to preach today. So I want to invite you to do that now. Friends, let's take a few minutes now. Let's take a few minutes now to listen to what we learned from each other. If this is God's seedbed, and we are the fertile soil, and we're all one of those tiny elements of the soil, what is it that we do? How do we do it? How do we interact with the other elements of the soil to make this a fertile seedbed? Helpers, what did you hear from each other? We prefer to be in the background. What else? That we give love in small ways. We all need that in order to get out and do the thing that we're called to do. What else? What else did you hear from each other?
Some of our professions relate to this category.
Yeah, so Linda's saying some of our professions help us to identify with the category that we identify with. Yeah, sometimes our vocation becomes our job, and sometimes it doesn't. It's important to remember that. What else?
Most of our second choices organizer.
Oh, that's interesting, that most of your second choice would have been organizer. Fascinating. Thank you all so much. Advocates, what did you learn from each other?
That we feel it's often very situational, the advocate role, depending on where you feel like you're drawn to and your passion, your knowledge bases. And then there was also a little bit about privilege and recognizing the privilege that we have in various scenarios and being able to leverage that rather than gain power from that.
Sure. So I want to say that in case you need to hear it amplified, that being an advocate is both situational, and that also we have to be mindful of our privilege whenever we're an advocate, that we use that to advocate rather than to gain more power. Was there anything else?
One common thread is that we tend to be comfortable talking.
We tend to be comfortable talking, yes? Anything else, advocates?
As a student, I wasn't one of your most desirable people, so when I became a teacher, I found that I could work within the system to ask questions that kids couldn't.
That's right. So wisdom from my dad, that when he was a student, probably not your best student, but then whenever he became a teacher, he was able to use that personal knowledge that he had to advocate on behalf of the students.
And you had lots of brothers and sisters that didn't live at our house.
That's the truth. Organizers, what did you hear from each other? Oh, good job, organizers.
We talked about power of people. Okay, that was pretty big for everybody. But we also talked about, for me, it was nurturing leaders. I use the coach model, which goes back to, what I do. Like I try to find different skills in different people and plug them into the right spot. But sometimes that has to change. And you can figure out a way to people buy in to make those changes and try to get them still involved. That was a big work.
So Dennis just talked about paying attention to the power of the people, paying attention to the skills and gifts of folks, deploying them, plugging them in. Sometimes you have to move them around, and the model of being a coach, which Dennis is. What else, y'all?
Our small group, I see that has some overlap, and there's a lot of sub-roles within it. So there's teachers, trainers, listeners, bosses, and that takes that organization to come out from all of it. There's some overlap, but then also some sub-roles that are strong.
Yeah, so Pat's talking about the different roles that organizers play, teachers, trainers, coaches, bosses, and that there's some overlap, but there are sub-roles in all of that. Anything else?
Some of us also felt like we did it in the campers, and we did that and then came here and really shared what
Yeah, that organizers feel a lot like helpers and could be either. Rebels, talk to me. A passion for justice. What else?
signs of a place where you're eager to go.
Yes.
You know, communicate instead of just trying to deal with it. Also, I think being willing to be seen. Sometimes even if you're
So Megan just said that rebels have a place for their anger to go, and they also have a need to be seen and to speak on behalf of folks.
We're talking about how we support the advocacy of the other groups, their points of the day,
So Anne's talking about how the rebels support the advocates. And remember, we're all mixed up in the soil bed together, right? That fertile soil is only able to give life to the seeds that God plants when we're all working together, so that the roots can sprout down deep, so that no matter what's happening on the surface, right, there's richness from the soil that we are together. Friends, you preached an excellent sermon this morning. Well done. I want to invite you to hang on to these, because in the coming weeks and months, we're going to be diving down deeper into this information and more, so that our church can collaborate with other organizations and to collaborate more within our own four walls to make our community a more just and righteous, merciful and loving place. Thanks be to God.